Hello friends! Today I want to make a video about Dominator skills and things you should know as a Dominator. Oftentimes you're only going to be a Dominator once, maybe, unless you're an R5 where your alliance is going to be getting the plaza a lot. Even if your alliance is going to win, you'll generally rotate in different R4s in order to kind of share the love, share the wealth, because there are some nice benefits and perks to being the Dominator. On this particular server where you can see I was Dominator the first 3 times in a row, I was the R5 of the strongest alliance on the server by far. And I also kind of had the third alliance was my Academy alliance, basically. So I had a lot of control of a lot of the server, but there were also a lot of really obnoxious whales in my alliance, and they would occasionally go off the deep end. And a lot of them were unfortunately my R4s. I kind of inherited that. I didn't start as the R5. I got promoted when our other R5 kind of quit. So I did not trust my R4s to do this. I had one that I was thinking about giving 1 week, and then they ended up quitting the game. Anyways, long story short, I've been Dominator a lot. I just wanted to kind of help people if you're unfamiliar with the role, if you want to prepare in case you're going to do it, just to help you do a better job. Since I'm not the Dominator, I won't be able to show you everything, but the one thing is when you are Dominator, you're going to want to click down here and you'll see that they have the default buff on, which gives troop attack, defense, health, and lethality. I can't remember 100%, but you either click here or there, and I'm pretty sure it's here, where you click on then this, and it will give you a list of all of the buffs, all 6 of these buffs that are here to choose from, in addition to the one that he currently has, the Dominator buff. So if you're really short on resources, this is actually not that great of a buff, but you can put that on if you don't need other buffs. The really, really cool thing about this is that you can then put on Chairman or Scholar anytime you want without waiting in line. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know this. There is a 5-minute cooldown. So like before bed, you pop in Chairman, make sure you've got your research and your buildings going, pop on Scholar after that, do all your troops, and then I would turn on Executive so that you can get that resource generation kind of thing. The big thing is remembering to switch out your buffs. Obviously, for any kind of attacking PvP, this Dominator buff is pretty beast mode. But you can obviously, of course, still go with the general or advisor. The other really cool thing is that if you win your server versus server prep and battle, you get extra good buffs, and that does also apply to the Dominator too. I don't know if it's a 200% or 150% increase, but the buffs are buffed if you win and you take control of Central Plaza, and that is the case for your specific Dominator buff as well. So really quick, when you come in here, if you are Dominator or Executive, for each one of these, there will be a button at the bottom that doesn't say apply. It will have a box to check that says automatically appoint. You are going to want to turn on the automatic appoint, most likely, for everything except for Executive. The reason why you don't want to do it for Executive is because the Executive has the ability to then turn on or off auto approve, to remove people from the queue, to list people and give them punishments. So you do not want just anybody to be able to go in there and grab Executive. You only want to normally put people that you trust, generally another R4 or R5 in your alliance, but it doesn't have to be somebody in your alliance. You just want it to be somebody that you can trust. About the punishments, one other really cool thing about punishments is that if you give somebody a punishment, they also cannot apply for a position. Something about buffs that you might want to do as a Dominator is think about things like if you have a syrup match coming up, or if you have a Citadel or Stronghold fight where you think there might be another alliance that's going to show up. If I was the Dominator or Executive, I would go in and click the box here that says automatic apply. I would click it off for those events so that I could put in my alliance members for that particular thing. So the nice roles to do that for are obviously these three: the healing, the march capacity, and the lethality buff. If you do win the Central Plaza in a server versus server where you're the overall dominator, and you have both servers using your same Central Plaza building, the lines can get really long. So like this is server 5. It's not a super active server. So generally speaking, when you want a buff, you can just come in here and get a buff. Like if I want chairman, it's 2 hours. I can go ahead and grab chairman. I can go ahead and grab scholar. There's no waiting. On the newer servers, that's not the case. And then especially on the newer servers, if you like lost to another newer server and you have 2 new server people and you have 2 new servers sharing one Central Plaza, I literally had a list of like 20 people long waiting in line for Scholar one time, and it really upset the other server, but I just had to remove the people from the other server. It was literally a 10-hour queue. So they're going to get mad if you do that, but you also need to think about what's best for your server, and your server should not be punished because they won. But that being said, this is also why sometimes people will try to make sure if you won prep that you let the other people win the battle, or vice versa, so that you don't have to share your Central Plaza, because there are perks. You do get more gifts to give away, which is fun. You get the, like I said, boosted buffs, but you also then have to share. So just, personal decisions. And then there was, of course, drama because everybody's going to have an opinion about don't let the other server have buffs, and the other server is going to be like, that's ridiculous, you should let us have buffs. And obviously if you're on the losing server, you're like, wait, we want buffs. And then if you're on the winning server, you're like, but the line's too long. So you've got a lot of that back and forth. And as the dominator, you need to deal with that headache. So do what you can do. I think a fair thing, what I did was when I was a dominator, I appointed somebody as executive, and I made sure that they passed it off to somebody else when they were going to go to bed, so that the executive and I could keep an eye on the lines. And as long as there weren't too many people in line, absolutely left the other server there. But if there was a really long line, I just took everybody out from the other server. On like strongest chief kind of days where everybody is doing a training day, you kind of then need to turn off auto approve, and then you can move people up and down the list so that you can just sort your team, so that you can sort your server to the top of the list and keep their players on the list so that they can get the buff eventually, but they just have to wait longer. And the frustrating thing about that is that you end up waiting so long that almost nobody's going to end up using the buffs because they're going to forget and not be in the game by the time the buff comes up, which is another reason why it's good to kind of keep the line shorter. All right, so the next tab, so that's pretty much the entire appoint tab. For the second tab, I'm going to talk about the Dominator skill. So for one thing, you absolutely want to go ahead and just do all of this. If you look at the top, there are plenty of points. Just turn the points into diamonds, no problem. You can use all 3 right in a row. I told Storm to do that yesterday, but it looks like he only used it once. I'll make sure I remind him to do it 2 more times. I think the diamonds just go to you personally, but again, tons of points. Like, we're not at all at risk of missing out on points, so there's absolutely no reason not to take advantage of that. All right, so the next skill is medical aid. This is a buff that when you activate it will go for everybody on your server. And you can see healing speed plus 50% for all chiefs of the current kingdom for 24 hours. These buffs, if you notice here, you can see in cooldown for 4 days. These buffs have a week-long cooldown, so you want to use them strategically. And the biggest thing you want to do is when you're first dominator, use your construction, tech, and military rush buffs pretty early on, because the next week is generally when strongest chief, king of the wilderness, or server versus server is going on. The most important thing to do is to make sure that you use these construction, tech, and military rush buffs on the best days for server versus server kind of preparation phase, for strongest chief, or for king of the wilderness. And since those are, I'm pretty sure, always that second week that you're Dominator, when Central Plaza first comes up, sometimes you get it weekly. So like the ones that I had back to back, those 3, I was Dominator for a week, we had a new Central Plaza. I was Dominator for a week, we had a new Central Plaza, that kind of thing. So even though the buffs had a week-long cooldown, I basically essentially could only use them all each once because we only had a week-long term versus a 2-week-long term. One time it did bug and it gave us a 4-week-long term on server 5. I haven't seen that on server 20 before. So you want to, like I said, line these skills up, the construction, tech, and military rush buff up with your event. So I'm just going to show you for this Kingdom Showdown, the first day, always speed ups. I use the construction buff on this first day because most people, like once you get to be in Stellar, I absolutely don't bother building unless it's an event. So people are going to want to hit this first day hard because they haven't been able to build for almost 2 weeks. They might have enough crystals to get their next upgrade. They are going to be excited to use it. They're going to speed it up. They might do a couple of builds. So this is going to be your best day for sure to pop your construction buff. Even though it is a soldier speed up day, the better day for soldiers is, I think it's day 4. The better day for soldiers are these ones where you can kind of see the list. And it gives points for the type of soldiers that you're training. And it gives you the points, the difference for the promoting them. This kind of thing, and sometimes that'll be twice during the event, like for King of the Wilderness, especially later on, it's often on 2 days. You're going to want to pop it on one of those 2 days, and that might depend on the cooldown. So like if you used it the week before, it might not be available for the first training day, but the second day towards the end of the week, it will be up. So then just use it on that day, and that's fine. As the Dominator, I would normally tell people, I will pop the construction buff at the start of the new day. I will pop the military rush buff on day 4. For this event, it would be pretty obvious that you would pop it on day 4. We had a new Dominator. He popped it on day 2. But that's okay. It's still better than not using the powers at all. Some of the Dominators don't use the powers at all. So then you also have the research buff. The research buff on King of the Wilderness or Strongest Chief days, when there is a research power day, so points for powering up research versus speeding up research, that is going to be your best day to use the research buff. That might also only be day 1, so you just kind of want to look through the days to see what is the best day. So on this particular event, I did double check. All of the research days are speed up for research. So it absolutely really doesn't matter too much when you use it. Me personally, I would use it on the last day because we've used the construction buff on the first day. People are going to be using all of their resources for construction. At this point, we're a pretty old server, so I don't think a ton of people are going to be hurting for resources except for the lower level players. But then you've also got your training day on day 4, so you've had some time to recover your resources. And then having research just be on a different day. I like it being on the last day because people really do try to get a final push of like, oh my gosh, we're a little bit behind. Let's really try to push and get ahead of the server. So that's a good day to have a buff. Again, you're going to want to put the training day on the day where it's best for training points. And then I still like, my personal preference is still to have construction on that first day because I think people hit that day the hardest. But you can also check the points on your server to see, does your server hit that one the hardest? I think a lot of people will notice that they do. But they also do hit that last day pretty hard too, because especially if you're like, ooh, I don't know, it's like, this is a really close match. So that last day might get kind of spicy. And then again, this last day, if you notice, it's not one day. It's 1.5 days. So you don't necessarily want to pop it right at the very, very beginning of the day because it will fall off. This particular Dominator should hit it pretty early in the day because his alliance is most active close to reset. So if I was him, I would let my alliance know I'll pop it like 2 or 3 hours into the new day so that it's not immediately in the new day. People know that it's coming so they don't immediately start rushing their researches, but that they can still benefit from it before they go to bed. And it will be up for the people that are on the different time zones that are playing the next day and as far into kind of the end of the day as possible, kind of thing. So hopefully all of that makes sense when you're going to use your construction, when you're going to be using your research and training. Every now and then these events are like, I don't know if I've ever seen one that's longer than 7 days, but if there is, then hey, try to use one in the beginning, try to use one at the end. I've seen some pretty long events, but I don't think any of them were long enough that you could use a buff both in the beginning and the end of the event. So you really just want to find out what day you're going to be using it, check your calendar, and just be very careful that you don't use it for a stupid event a couple of days before a good event, like Strongest Chief, King of the Wilderness. And by stupid event, I mean, I don't think we have anything going on. We've got the Expel Predators going on right now, but, these little one-off events where it's like, build up your research and construction. Do not use it on those days, unless they're also obviously on a King of the Wilderness kind of day. That's the other thing I would look for. Does it double up with something else? Alrighty, so that is those buffs. We talked about construction research. Oh, medical aid. So medical aid for server versus server, I would pop to make sure it was up for before we go to the new server. So like you can check the timer on that Kingdom defense, this 3-day, 2 hours. This Dominator normally plays like closer to reset. So if I were him, I would probably pop the buff before I go to bed because that'll be about like 4 or 5 hours before we can start to teleport to the new base, and it'll make sure that that buff is up the entire time we're able to port to the new server. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, I do want to test this. I think we keep the buff for Central Plaza. I'm not 100% sure. I do know for certain that if you have any of these appointed Dominator skills, that they turn off immediately the second the Central Plaza fight starts. But I think that we keep the healing buff. I do want to test that. I'm not 100% sure about that. But in this case, even if it falls off when the Central Plaza fight starts, the fact that we'll have it for the whole time before Central Plaza is still very, very helpful. And then the other time you're going to want to use this is on Syrup Day. So since it lasts for 24 hours, I would pop it at the beginning of the day that Syrup Wars is going to be, so that it will cover all of the Syrup War time. And that was Sunday, so that will mean that for sure it would be back up for Central Plaza. Okay, so we talked about the gems, we talked about the medical aid, we talked about the construction, tech, and research. All right, so then these three, this is the easiest one. Forced teleport. The most common use of this skill is cleaning up your base. So if you notice, there's only 14, so he hasn't used any. But if you have an inactive player that is sitting around your trap, when you are Dominator, use this skill, port those people away. It is such a pain to move shelters in this game. It's insane how much you have to hit them in order to leave. So that is the best use of that skill. Clean up your monkey trap. If you've used all of your forced teleports to clean up your monkey trap and you still have plenty, you can always offer it to other alliances. So like, especially if you're on a newer server, you're watching this video and you're like, oh, this new skill I have, this is so cool. Does anybody else want to take advantage of this? And you can offer it to them. It's also useful for flag building. I've had certain times where like I really wanted to place a flag in a certain place and there was a resource node that was blocking, there was this blocking, there was a town blocking. If you can move that fountain, cool. Use the force teleport, use that fountain. The really, really cool time to use this is for things like a citadel or stronghold fight. So I normally am on servers where we assign those out. So like if it was, if I was at a Citadel and it was my alliance's Citadel and I saw somebody coming in with, it's generally a noob that sent a troop from base and they're coming to attack the Citadel, if you notice that it's probably going to land before your rally does, use that force teleport and teleport them away so it will cancel their rally. This is also helpful if your own alliance member starts a rally and goes to attack a Citadel or stronghold that maybe you're not supposed to attack, or they go to solo attack it instead of joining your rally. That's another time you could use it to cancel the rally. You also alternatively can just remove them from your alliance if it is somebody in your own alliance. If somebody is rallying the Citadel or Stronghold that they're not supposed to rally, you can easily also just remove them from your alliance and that will cancel their rally. This last one is very specific. It's really more for if you have a problematic player. So if you have somebody who is terrorizing the server, this is a great way to find them and attack them. I'm not quite sure other reasons why this might be useful. If you're looking for somebody in your own alliance, you can generally send them reinforcements. That's my quickest way that I find them. If the reinforcement is going to be like a 20-minute walk, then that's when I'll zoom out and be like, look around the map that way. But I would say that's probably the least useful skill unless you have a really, really obnoxious player on your server. Speaking of a really, really obnoxious player on your server, this buff is super cool. So it prevents chiefs from attacking others for an hour. On server 20, we had somebody, a whale that just absolutely went off the deep end and would just randomly attack people. So we saved this particular buff for our trap time and our apostles time, which we did on alternate days, so that we could put it on the player when we were doing events so that he would not attack us during those events. It is really, 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 really rude to interrupt another alliance's events. I've played a lot of games like this, and that is a very, very general rule that no matter how much of a jerk you are, no matter how hardcore you are, no matter how much trouble you want to cause, you don't attack players when they're doing an event. It's so rude. But this person did, and so that's why we had to use the truce order for that. And that's also why we could never let their alliance have Dominator, and we had to take it every time because we needed to use these abilities on them. We needed to have them available in case we needed to use them on them. The other thing I used that skill for was I had one of my whales had a death in the family, and so he logged on and he just started massacring the server. So I popped it on him to calm him down. Obviously he had done a lot of damage by then, but that is another situation where if you have somebody that breaks nap for whatever reason, obviously he had a fair reason. That is a really, really tough situation. I don't blame him. This truce order, the other thing that it's really useful for is if you have anyone on the server who is breaking nap. So the first time you hear that somebody is breaking nap, it'll generally be reported in world chat. It'll be reported in nap chat. If they send you proof that, an attack went through, you can go ahead and just, hit. First off, I would click on the coordinates to see where the person is. So if you see that somebody is at a base that is not protected and they are sending attacks, absolutely hit that player with that truce order. It doesn't matter what the reason is, they should not be farming the other people's base. You might want to wait a little bit and see what's going on, but a lot of damage can happen in that time. So as a Dominator, personally, if I saw anybody full-on attacking a nap protected base, I would automatically hit that player with a truce order. These buffs have 1 hour cooldowns. So the problem is if you have a couple of people causing trouble, you want to just make sure you toss it on the most problematic. So either the one that's going to go the longest, the one that's the strongest doing the most damage. Obviously try to use diplomatic skills, but something to keep in mind. You just do what you can do when you have these kind of powers. All that being said, a lot of Dominators have absolutely no clue about any of these skills and never use them or never really have the need to use them. And hopefully you don't have the need to use them, but it's just nice to know how they work and to have them in the back of your mind so that if something happens, even if you're not the Dominator and you're like, oh, this fountain is in the way, oh, let me message the Dominator and ask if they can move it. Or, wow, this person is just going crazy on the server. Can anybody help, please? You know, if you post the coordinates to the fountain, the Dominator can quickly click on that person, pop that truce order on them, and they're not able to attack anymore. I do really, really wish the executive could use some of these skills, but the executive cannot. Only the Dominator can use these skills. But I think that's all the skills. The points really don't matter. This makes me feel like, whose line is it anyway? The points don't matter. All of the things require points to use, but if your server is active, you have plenty of points and you should never worry about the points. Just use the skills when you need them, and the points should never matter. One little fun thing that you can do as a Dominator, you can... oh, and it's not going to let me do it, but you can click on here and you can set the flag. I never personally did that because I'm from the US. Most of my alliance was from, I wouldn't say most, I would say at least a third of my alliance was Russian. I had quite a few French players in my alliance. I had people from all over the world. So I feel like it's not appropriate to set a flag personally, especially my own flag, when there were very few Americans, for example, in my alliance. If you are in, you know, there are many alliances that are of a specific nationality where it's GER. So it's, you know, very proudly saying we're a German alliance, or our US, we're very proudly a Russian alliance. Absolutely. If that's the case, cool. Go in there, set your flag, awesome sauce. But just keep in mind, especially if you're the R5, if you're one of the few nationalities of that type in the alliance, I don't think it's appropriate to put your flag in, but it's a game, you do you. If you set it, you can change it, so it's fine. The other thing you can do is change the name of your server. So, like, I had fun. I think I used Misfits Toys one time. Oh, I wonder if we can look it. It doesn't look like we can look it up. Oh, but you can also see on these dates here. So it was a week long for all of those. And then I can math, honestly. 10. That was 2 weeks. And then it should have been 2 weeks from then on out. By that point, I was like, I am done. Can somebody else babysit this alliance? And so this person kind of took over for me, which is pretty cool. And then we lost. That was a very sad week. I was very stressed about losing all of our Dominator buffs. I looked it up. I was trying to see if I could see some of the names that I used. One of our Central Plazas was really funny. The number 2 alliance got really cranky, and instead of participating in Central Plaza, decided to use that as a day to just go start attacking everybody's bases, because they were all going to quit the game and go to a different server. Because there was conflict on the server or whatever. So anyway, their acronym for their alliance was LOS. So that plaza, I said, goodbye, sore lossers, LOS-ERS. I know, petty. But, like, I had been dealing with the drama from this alliance for a while, and it was really, really nice that they finally left. And it was actually kind of a fun fight, even though they were, you know, not very strong and not a very whatever opponent. So anyway, have fun with that. The other thing you can do is set the Dominator declaration. So, like, I'll normally set it with something like, so on a server versus server, I was like, yay, good job everybody, I'm winning server versus server, thank you for all your hard work. The funny thing is that when you set the Dominator declaration, it sends that same declaration to your other to the losing server. So when they log on to see the Central Plaza to try to get an appointed buff, they'll see, congratulations, you did so well. And they're like, I got some funny comments about that when I was the Dominator in that situation. There is a cooldown on when you can swap out that notice, and I can't remember what it is offhand. I think it's like at least 2 days. So to keep that in mind. The big thing that I did was, especially for our first Kingdom Showdown, I said, hey guys, heads up, on such and such day, the other server will be able to come to us. Make sure you shield up and do not go out collecting resources. So it's a pretty short message. And And you didn't used to be able to use any kind of punctuation. I reported that, and I think they fixed it. Actually, I reported that, and I know they fixed it. So you can use punctuation now, but oh my gosh, having very limited characters, knowing that I was writing in English and most of the people that were reading it were going to have to translate it, and not being able to use punctuation was really terrible. So at least now we can use punctuation, and you can put funny stuff in there. Some people put like sayings, motivational quotes, things like that. I'm very like detail oriented, game focused, so I put important game stuff like congrats on the win and make sure you shield in 2 days kind of thing. But yeah. So other fun things, when you are the Dominator, you get to be able to use both of these skills. So they don't come on automatically. You do need to go into your skins and turn them on. That is absolutely the only way you get those skins, and you only have them while you're the Dominator. So turn them on, use them, and have fun. And in case you didn't know, there is no quote-unquote buff tied to that skin. Don't worry about that. I worried about that. That's a different video. The other thing is going to be when you're the Dominator, you get these Dominator rewards. So this chest here, when you can pass out boxes, you cannot pass out a box to yourself. And that is because you're automatically sent this, which is the biggest box. And look at that. Whew. That is the magic right there. I mean, obviously 20,000 gems is nice, but beautiful. So along those lines, you can also pass out these boxes. The cool thing is you can only send out one of these, but if you have somebody that is like really, really awesome, so like this person is an R4, so if he wanted to, he could send that box to the R5 that gave him that position in that really nice box, and whoever you give this first box to, you can still send them the other 2 boxes. So if you have somebody you really want to give a lot of stuff to, you send one of each type of box. Generally, you have enough people that you want to send stuff to that you're not going to do that. But something to keep in mind. When I was Dominator, I pretty much always used these boxes to reward my R4s and my R5s. I was in 2 different alliances, so I sent them to my R4s and my R5s of both of the alliances. For this section, it is nice, if you don't absolutely hate the other people on your server, to send the R5 or the most active R4 of some of the other alliances on your server. So on my particular server, I think I sent out 5 total boxes of these 30. Well, I would say probably 4 to 6 of these boxes of the 30 to people that were in neither of my 2 alliances. So people that I talked to a lot in Snapchat, people that helped organize their groups, just as I know you're working hard, doing your leadership thing, keeping your players strong and keeping them in line kind of thing. So that's just something to keep in mind. Obviously, it's not required. They are yours to give out. The Dominator gives them out. The Dominator can do whatever they want with them. Just keep in mind that the praise log, you can click on this and you can see, who got things kind of thing. So keep that in mind. So this is what makes sense. So he did send that first box to the R5. That's exactly what I would do. And then he sent this to Kirby, who's the other R4 there. And then he sent this to Snow's alt. He probably didn't know that he could have sent that box to Snow. Like if I was Snow, I would have wanted that on my main versus on my alt. And then these are other players in his alliance that are very, very active. So that's a good use of those. And then for these, again, he sent them pretty much to his alliance, his alliance, his alliance, his alliance, his alliance. This, so R5 of another strong alliance on the server. This is an R4 of the other strong alliance in the server, R4 of another alliance in the server. This is me. That was really nice of him. I didn't even notice that. So he actually sent out 10, almost 10 it looks like, of those blue boxes to R4s and R5s of the other leaders, R4s and R5s of the other 2 really strong alliances on the server. So that was really nice of him. So the thing to know about that is that people can see where you send your gifts, almost nobody is going to check, so don't stress about it. I did send stuff to my alts, so like when I play on a server and I have 2 accounts, my secondary account is pretty much just as strong as my first account, so even as Dominator, I wouldn't send myself this top box. I always send that to my best R4, R5, but for my alt, I absolutely would for sure send them a blue box and possibly a purple box, because I really love my alt and I put a lot of love into my alt. Like, I actually spend money on them too sometimes. But most people, like I said, on Snow, he sent her this yellow box. He sent her alt that purple box. He could have sent her a yellow box, a purple box, and a blue box, and then sent her alt also a blue box. That's probably what I would have done if I was him in that alliance, and he probably just didn't know to do that. One other thing that's cool to know, if you didn't know, if you're a Dominator, you get an icon down here that lets you click on the icon and teleport you to the thing. Well, not teleport you, but it brings you to this place where you're already in there. So that's really cool. So it helps you get to those buffs really quickly. I think as executive you get that too. I can't remember. I wasn't executive as often as I was Dominator. But I hope that helps. And especially if you're on a new server and you're like, hey Dom, can you use this teleport buff? And they'll probably be like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. And you can be like, oh, let me show you how some of that stuff works. I'll be happy to tell you. Or you can link to my video, that kind of thing. I'm talking really fast because I'm having just one of those kind of days. Anyway, have fun. Good luck. Bye.